be found live behind-the-scenes coverage of the recording of the Radio Tech Guys podcast, episode 4, here on YouTube and on our Google Hangouts.
Chris, this is arguably the best podcast in the world.
Oh, arguably.
Don't argue.
We are about 3 minutes and 53 seconds away from the start of this episode. You want to punch this out on social media again? Make sure the share is out there if you don't mind. We'll be recording episode 4, and coming up tonight, we're going to be talking about what happened with the national test of the emergency alert system this past weekend. Got a little blurb about that. Also, Nielsen and their PPM expansions, made mainly for television, but there are some benefits to radio. We'll talk about that. But in the main segment, we're going to continue our discussion on IP audio infrastructures and the changing of our mindsets as we transition from an analog plant to a digital plant. Also, your questions coming up here on the show tonight as well. You can still get those into us by email right now at ask@theradiotechguys.com. You can also call in by telephone and be on the show with us live.
Telephone.
I know. How about that? 304-284-2020. 304-284-2020 right now. You can also go to our website at theradiotechguys.com and see more there. About 2 minutes and 30 seconds away from the start of episode 4. I need a cool countdown timer to put up over here.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I hope so.
That's not the number that I got when you called me earlier.
What did you get earlier?
I got 554.
No! Did we change it?
Well, it could have just been the mask.
Oh, I bet it's the mask. I did.
All right, then we're in good shape. Again, behind the scenes recording.
Can't remember our own phone number. I'm getting texts here from Alex like, is that the right number? Like, well, I don't know. Is it? No one's
call
ever
it and find out.
No one's ever called it, so we wouldn't exactly know.
Nobody has a phone anymore.
I know. All right, we are now 1 minute. We are T-minus 1 minute and 20 seconds from the recording of the Radio Tech Guys podcast, episode 4.
I'm tingly.
We'll go ahead and put our slate back up since there are currently, well,
self-deprecating humor.
1 minute. Oh, that was the shortcut. Not shortcut, the shortcut of music. Quick, Alex, fill time. You're live on the stream.
I know.
I mean, your picture.
Oh, hello.
All right, 30 seconds. 30 seconds out from the start. Not too late. Send us an email right now at ask@theradiotechguys.com or call in 304-284-2020, 304-284-2020. We are 10 seconds out. Going to slate. 10 seconds out from the live recording. See you in a moment. And welcome inside the Radio Tech Guys podcast, episode 4. I am Chris Moran, alongside by about 21.3 miles down the road, down I-79, my friend and yours, Alex Linger.
Hello, pedestrians.
God, I can't believe you did it. It's painful.
Oh, it's so good.
So good. Well, welcome inside. This is episode 4. We're excited to be here, and we got a lot of ground to cover tonight. Coming up on the show, going to cover some news headlines from this past week in the broadcast industry. Also going to talk more IP audio. And this week, we're kind of delving into some of the mindset changes that we have to undergo when we're moving from an analog environment to a digital one. And a lot of the things that go with that and some of the real benefits that you may not be thinking about out of the gate that come with an IP infrastructure. We're also going to answer your calls and your questions as we get going in here tonight. You can reach us by phone at ask@theradiotechguys.com.
That's email. That's not phone.
Well, it's email, but I'm saying phone because we actually we have calls coming in currently.
Oh, good.
That we're going to get to here in just a second. Yeah. First of all, though, you know what? There's been a lot of stuff going on this week, Alex, and I know that we worked on it, and so did many, many people around the country. The big national EAS test occurred this weekend. It was a big deal. There was a lot of forms to fill out with the FCC. In fact, two of the 3 for every radio station have already been, the deadlines have already come. There's a third follow-up one that is a lot more intense. You know, generally, I think all the reports I read, I looked at a story earlier today online at radiomagonline.com. It's kind of interesting. Generally speaking, it was a pretty big success. All in all, there were some weird instances, I think, where there was some trouble, mainly in television is a lot of what I read. They had some trouble with the crawl. You know, the text crawl in some markets was not legible. There's some reports that a couple stations in LA didn't run it, which is kind of a problem. But all in all, it went really well. Form 3 is coming due. You've got a little bit of time. Most people have did theirs the day after, but technically you have until November 14th to do those. But we'll put a link to this article if you want to read more about the test that happened this past week. One other note I want to pass along to you from our friends, Doug Irwin, who is a writer-editor at Radio Magazine. There was a pretty cool article which we'll link to actually about our group. Well, not the article wasn't entirely about our group, but there was a piece of it in there about some stuff that we did last season in sports broadcasting and remote broadcasting, where we had some custom furniture designed and built by our friend David Holland at Omnirax Furniture that we use for a 3-week period where we do 56 or more games, basketball games. Really kind of a neat setup, and we dove in there some photos and some articles about that, which we will jump into there. But what do you say we grab a call or two before we get into our content about IP audio networks and see we don't have a call screener, so this is going to be real interesting to see who's there. So let's check it out.
Let's do it.
You're on the Radio Tech Guys.
Hey, is it me?
It is you.
Hey, this is Kirk Harnack with This Week in Radio Tech, and I just want to tell you guys that I'm loving your podcast. It is really amazing, and I'm so glad that you're doing this. You're just doing this good, in-depth stuff, and I'm having a good time with it. So,
well, that's awesome, man. Hey, thanks for reaching out. We were we traded some emails there, I know, late last week, and we definitely want to talk to you more this week. But obviously, Kirk does a fantastic show. If you don't have a chance to check it out, definitely do that. This Week in Radio Tech is the name of it. Kirk also works for the Telos Alliance, who our company works a lot with, very closely on a lot of projects, from processing to our studio build. So we talk a lot about it, but we're pretty excited to be talking to you. And this is something I know that you're passionate about, this industry, and we are too. And it's kind of been what spurred us to go down this road and provide, content about the stuff that we're passionate about. And radio is fun, and it's getting a lot more fun, it seems like, with every new thing that comes out.
Well, I'm eager to hear more about the national EAS test. I've got some of my own stations in Mississippi, but I'm so far away from them that I'm not involved with operations from day to day. I just go do engineering there every few months and kind of get to keep things on track that way. So I'm really curious to hear about that. And again, welcome, you guys. I can't wait to hear more episodes. I'm really excited about it.
Awesome, Kirk. Thanks so much for calling in. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, Kirk.
Take care. Bye.
Talk to you soon. Kirk Harnack, This Week in Radio Tech. It's.
Can I say real quick?
Yes, please.
I'm a little bit starstruck. Can I just say that right now? So when I discovered This Week in Radio Tech, I binge watched it And I mean binge watched it. I love it. Cool. That's so cool to talk to.
Yeah, he does a great job.
Guy.
He does just a tremendous job with that. In fact, that's the latest. I'm halfway through one. I was just looking at my podcast app. I'm halfway through the latest episode, and I haven't finished it yet. And I was thinking about we need to wrap this thing up so we can get back downstairs and finish Kirk's show. We'll also put a link to his show in the show notes of this too. But we hope to be talking with him a lot more. In fact, bringing him in as a guest to talk about some of these topics that we want to cover. So awesome. You can get into 304-284-2020. We're going to be recording for about the next 45 minutes or so. If you're watching live, we'd love to talk to you. All right, let's jump into our topic, Alex. What do you say?
I think that's a great idea.
All right. So we've kind of been hashing our way through some of the IP audio infrastructure stuff over the last few weeks, primarily because it's what we've been fully engulfed in our day jobs at the group that we work for. And so last week we kind of drilled down a little bit into the pre-planning that goes into like what gear you are thinking about purchasing and how you're going to address these things and channel numbering and some of the nuts and bolts that go into it there. But even a kind of a bigger picture than that, I think, and something that I know a lot of group engineers and others struggle with especially when they're deploying their first IP audio infrastructure, is that there's a lot of things that change between the analog domain and this new IP domain. And it's oftentimes things that we're not thinking about too much up front. Some of it is I think a little bit more obvious, instead of the days where you have like 266 punch blocks underneath the console mounted because you've got to get every channel's A and B side wired to it, plus every output bus that's available on the console all punched down. And like the PDs want to change and move their CD players like over, and you're underneath the cable either moving Molex plugs around or repunching. That's one of the more obvious components I think people think of when they think of IP audio, is like, yeah, any fader can be any channel you want it to be, and every jock can have their own profile. That stuff is super cool. But I think that's pretty common. That's one of the benefits that people think about. Mm-hmm. But there are others. There are things like if you have a fairly complex operation, let's say with 10 pieces of remote broadcast equipment in your rack room, well, every time a different station was using your ISDN1 unit, you would have to go to whatever routing system you used or however you changed which IFB route was feeding that gear. That's been one of the biggest benefits, I think, in our complex markets, has been this fully automated mix, minus, and bus routing configuration, where now in today's world, when I dial up an ISDN unit or a Comrex access unit or a Zip1 or whatever on my console, I've got that source configured as a codec. I'm automatically now creating a mix minus on this console and routing it back to the appropriate remote gear. And if I have 10 of them on my console, it's doing a mix minus for all 10 by itself. We don't have to think anymore about, we've got to make sure we get the IFB bus of this console punched down and wired back to the router and cross route it, and however that worked for you in the analog workflow. And same thing with telephone hybrids. You would stick your Telos 1x6 hybrids or whatever you've had over the years in your control room and had to wire all the phone lines to them, blah, 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 audio in and out.
What a time saver. What a huge time saver.
Well, seriously. And also the flexibility that you gain from studio to studio and everybody being able to use these things. And not just those things. I mean, we have a situation in one of our markets where we ended up with a talk show studio. We ended up with a talk show studio that ended up not hosting a radio station like we thought it was going to. But we were kind of brainstorming last week. What are we going to move the station that was in there back in there? Or are we just going to leave it open? And we thought, well, what a perfect opportunity. They do a lot of local programming in that room where groups come in and religious groups come in and others. We can now leave this talk show studio set up with its 4 microphones, bring those 4 microphones up in any of the radio station control rooms or the production rooms as just sources on the board, and the operator or the engineer in that other room can mix the show, like not even in the same control room that the talent is in. I mean, those kind of things are huge.
I think I'm going to tell a little fact about what we do. So Chris and I, we actually share an office at the company that we work for. And around election season, as you can imagine, and I'm sure this is true in just about all of your stations, things get crazy. So one of the things that Chris and I does
Do.
Chris
And
I
we'll do again in November, on
Yes.
November 8th, the most crazy election of all time in
It's
history.
going to be a circus. We actually set up a little temporary Axia studio in our office. This past election, we used a little Core 16 and a what kind of console did we use?
I think it was a desk.
Yeah. And we actually sort of screen the remote sources that we bring in. We have reporters at the election headquarters for all the candidates, and some national. We'll have some national correspondents as well, and we actually check in with them first, make sure everything sounds good, and then we kind of hand that off to the actual studio that's running election coverage, and we can do that ad hoc. We don't have to create our own mix minus. The board does it for us.
Right.
And that's huge.
Yeah. And there's, even beyond that, just pulling the sources up in our studio, talking back to the remote talent. We also had a bus that we had configured where if we put ourselves in a specific bus, we were going into the headphones of the person mixing the election show in the talk show studio. So we could say to him in his ear while things are going on, we could say, John, Sean is ready on access C, or whatever the source was. And so, he felt confident then that he could pull that source up on the board. It was good. Nobody in there had to mess with checking it and all that, or wait till a break to check in or whatever.
Exactly. And we set that studio up in our office in a matter of like 15 minutes.
Yep.
There's nothing else that has to happen.
Super easy. It's just no more audio wires to drag around. Really, there's a ton of benefits like that. Beyond those, though, there's a whole layer that even takes things to a new level that we really have saved a lot of time with, and that is how we've been able to integrate our IP audio infrastructures with our automation system. Yep. So if you're like us, we use wide orbit automation for radio. It doesn't matter because you're doing similar things no matter what system you're using. We have a ton of broadcast tool switchers and other devices. So like, if we have a 5-station group who all run an ABC News program or something from Westwood One, we've brought that audio off the satellite receiver. We've either put it through a distribution amplifier or something to split it so that it's in our console routers and it's in everybody's automation switcher, analog automation switcher. And there's 3 closures that go along with it, which have now been duplicated or daisy chained 5 times to hit every station's automation system. Well, that's no longer necessary. We're able to bring the audio into our IP audio environment one time into a node, and we're able to bring those 3 closures that we need from Westwood One or ABC or who it may be into our system one time into a GPIO node. And then we've been able to interface our automation system directly with Pathfinder or whatever your IP audio infrastructure control software is, where we're saying, we're doing all of our on-air switching, our automation switching, plus our closures are all coming in. So we're wiring these one time. So no DAs, no multiple wiring of closures, trying to figure out where your wire broke in sequence here because the 5th station isn't getting their closure. Well, why is that? Is it the ground? Is it whatever? So it's the automation integration has been a gigantic time saver in terms of setting up a new building. In fact, I think, Alex, when we moved the group in the southern market into their new building with the 2 stations, I think we spent about 2 or 3 hours maybe on automation when we moved them over. It was super, super easy.
It's amazing how much easier that makes it.
Yep. So there's lots of benefits, obviously, and there's so many more things we could delve into in terms of mindset changing, but it really comes down to changing your thinking from a very kind of a rigid architecture where it's one-to-one wiring. Things are where you put them in the analog world, and in the digital world, it's very fluid. We have a huge internal debate all the time. From some other people in our group about documentation, and it always cracks me up. We say, like, where's the wiring documentation for this system? Well, it's in the web browsers.
It's at this website. Yeah, exactly.
It's in the web interfaces of all of these devices. Because
but it's so hard to document because it changes. It's so fluid.
It's fluid, and there is no need to document. I mean, no, there is need. In fact, we share the documentation. There are things that don't change, like the things we documented last week: source numbers and IP addresses. That stuff needs documented. But when you say Where's the wiring documentation for this studio that shows anything about the console setup? Well, I can tell you that Cat 6 cable number 251 is plugged into it here, and it's plugged into this switch over here. That's not changing.
Your console config is going to change at 3:00 when the next jock comes in.
Exactly.
So.
There, and it's so that it really changes your mindset about how you document the plant too. We tried. Yeah. I know there was some efforts at a couple of our groups, a couple of our clusters originally to try very hard to keep printing actual screenshots of these web UI pages of sources and destinations, which is cool for the ones that don't change. Like in your rack room, when you have all 8 in and 8 out filled up with your remote equipment, that's going to still be there. Like, yeah, okay, print it. It makes sense. You can put that in a binder. You can keep it. If you want documentation, you can have physical documentation of that stuff. But there's a lot of things that are fluid, and believe me, you may shake your head and say, "Oh, that's not good." How we can document that? Well, the benefits way outweigh the not being able to write it down. There's a lot more to it. And there's a big IT aspect, obviously, Alex, too, that goes into when you're thinking about how you're setting up these environments and the things you're checking and how you're doing that.
Yep, that's exactly right. You want me to talk about that?
Oh boy, one thing we've got to figure out these transitions. Like we're looking at I thought maybe looking at our format here and I thought, could I toss it any softer to you? There's a big IT aspect, Alex. Care to share more?
You're right, Chris. What's next? Okay. Yeah. So, some of the stuff that Chris was talking about, how great is it to run one piece of Cat 6 or 5e, but whatever, to each of your studios and rip out all of that mult cable, all those shipping cables, rip them out. You know how much weight that takes off of your ceiling? I mean, that's so much cable, and it's all on one piece of Cat 6 now. But we got to think about that a little bit. You need, when you're running Cat 6, there are some considerations. You need to make sure you do it right. A couple things that you should consider. I would assume that at least the runs to your studios, you're going to run custom cable. You're going to run unterminated cable and then put ends on it. I doubt people are going to buy 250-foot patch cords. You could, I guess, but why would you? Let's just run it, terminate it. It's great. But make sure you're going to terminate it correctly. Make sure you test it after you run it. Just because you plug it in and it works doesn't necessarily mean it's good and you're not going to drop packets. And, this is mission critical data, so you want to make sure it's going to work right. A couple things that you should have on hand. First of all, for termination of cable, if you're going to terminate a lot of cable, if you're going to make custom links in your studios to run from your CD player to your power station and so on and so forth, don't cheap out on your crimpers and your cable making tools. Get something good that's easy to use, that's comfortable. You're going to use it a lot while you're building your studio. I'm also going to plug, I have fallen in love with the easy RJ45 connectors. If you've ever put an RJ45 connector on Cat 6 cable, the old normal style is you would trim your cables, you'd trim the wires inside the cable, as short as you could to the right length, put it in the connector, and hopefully all the little wires would be long enough or short enough, depending on how you look at it, to get to the connector points, and then the back of your connector's on the jacket so you can crimp it down and all that. The easy RJ45 connectors, which are slightly more expensive, it's worth it though. You can cut the wires, the individual pairs inside the Cat 6 cable as long as you want. You stuff it in the connector, and the excess cable actually comes out the other end, comes out the front end. You have to use a special crimper. It's the Easy RJ45 crimp tool, I guess is what they call it. These are made by Platinum Tools or Black Box. Platinum Tools is actually an offshoot of Black Box. And what happens is when you crimp the cable, there's a blade on the crimper that cuts off all the excess wire. You don't have to worry about the length of your cables because you've just made a perfect Cat 6, and it's trimmed off the extra. It's beautiful.
There's nothing better than the pass-through. I mean, really, that changes. In fact, just today, I was making a cable with the bad crimpers that I found in my basement. I had pass-through connectors, but I didn't have a pass-through crimper.
Yes.
That made life, I'll just tell you straight.
You didn't utility knife it, did you?
I did after they went through.
Well,
So, but don't do that. It took twice as long.
Yeah. I mean, you can get a good set of crimpers that will do the easy RJ45s and a cable stripper and all that kind of good stuff for like $60, $70, let's say. But it's well worth it. Do that. Once you've made your cable, you should test it. Got to test it. And I am so guilty of not testing it, but you got to test it. Lots of different ways to do that. You don't need a $400, $500, $600 cable tester. You can absolutely go to Home Depot and get one of the $14, test each pin or each wire, and that's great.
Or you can buy one of these.
Or you can get a little nicer, and you can order stuff from Fluke, and you've now paid 80% of the cost because it says Fluke on it. But some of the nicer cable testers do some cool things like shoot the length of the cable. You probably know this about Cat 6 cable. You want to keep it under 320 meters or about 300 feet. So generally, I don't run anything past like 285 feet or something like that. And the nice thing about these sort of testers are they'll tell you that if you have a short or a break or something wrong with the cable, this will actually tell you the distance to that break, which is hugely helpful for long runs that are in walls and whatnot. But you can absolutely get a cheaper tester. That's up to you. One thing that you should look for, make sure the tester will check the shield if you're using shielded Cat 6. That's just a time saver. You can do that with a multimeter, but that's a time saver to do it all in one test. Fluke makes a lot of different equipment, cheaper equipment that you can test cable with, but lots of other companies do. Just, find what you like. When you're making Cat 6 cable, keep this in mind. To make it an actual certification-worthy cable, a couple things have to be present. Number one, you have to have strain relief on the back of your connector, and you can do that in the form of a boot or actually the easy RJ45 connectors from Platinum Tools have a specific strain relief that you can use with them. That's real nice. The other thing too, the distance between the jacket, wherever you've cut the cable and there's jacket and then wire, the distance between the jacket and the actual connectors on the RJ45 needs to be as little as possible.
You don't know what that distance is, do you? But
I don't have a clue what that distance is.
It's to the. Is it to the? I'm going to look it up, but it's to the pins, like where the pins crimp into the cable. Is that where they measure to?
Exactly, to that, and it's not really to the jacket. It's to the last twist in those pairs, to the actual copper portion of the connector. Because anywhere that the cable is not twisted, it's susceptible to interference. So you want to keep that as small as possible. But other than that, I mean, Cat 6, it's so easy to run and use. It's simple. And once you get good at it, you can fly through them.
Very cool. That's good stuff.
Great stuff,
yeah,
Chris.
It is. It's all good tips. We should also, that's a good chance for us to point out that we also have published a couple of new videos that are available on our YouTube channel, which you can get to from our website at theradiotechguys.com. We have a video that we shot at the new studio facility that we're building. You're seeing a little bit of it if you've watched this on our Google Hangout channel. From our new studio that we're building in our Morgantown headquarters. It's going to be a really nice talk show studio. We've done a nice walkthrough of how we have basically from how we started the project. We deployed a new power station and new IP stuff over there. We walked through the whole sequence, and in fact, just before this podcast will launch, we're going to go ahead and put up another one that is a complete walkthrough of configuring a power station from the beginning. And that should be pretty helpful, I think, too, in terms of deploying IP audio.
Yep, absolutely.
So we'll keep posting that content as we build that studio out. We are going to move on to some other stuff, though, in the coming weeks. I know that next week we're planning to do a couple of videos, actually this week, on HD FM, specifically configuring importer and exporter for multiple HD channels. And we're going to do these videos at an active transmitter site of ours that has multiple HD channels. We're going to actually look at some stuff. We're also we're going to take that same opportunity to do a series on how we're handling our live wire network that is extended to a transmitter site, and how we're staying in the digital domain all the way through our processor and all the way to the FM modulator on our exciter, which is pretty cool. It's actually the only site we have currently where we're doing that. But we're going to kind of take a virtual tour here in the video of the transmitter site. So that's coming up in the coming weeks.
And can I add an addendum?
Please.
We were talking about Cat6 cable, and I mentioned checking the shield if you're using shielded cable. I hope I'm not going against Axia's recommendations here, but in your studio environment, I wouldn't say that it's necessary to use shielded Cat6, to go between like your CD player and your power station and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, we haven't done that. You might consider doing that in an instance where you are at a facility like in our plant in the Eastern Panhandle that has an AM transmitter like one wall over. You might consider doing that. But in a non-RF environment, we certainly haven't had any trouble using non-shielded cable.
No, not at all. But like I was going to say, we do have our live wire network extended to transmitter sites, and we are fairly careful in those sites to use shielded Cat6 to mitigate any sort of RF bleed.
Absolutely. Reminder that we're going to be posting those videos. You can also reach out to us and get in touch with us by email anytime. The email address that you want to reach to us is ask-reach-to-us. The email you want to use is ask at theradiotechguys.com. And there's a lot more as a contact section on our website too at theradiotechguys.com. That's also where we'd love for you to go and subscribe to us on YouTube. Also on our iTunes podcast feed, or on the Google Play Store, but also now on Stitcher, Alex, which is pretty exciting. Boy. Yeah, we made it on Stitcher. Stitcher has over 20,000 shows you can discover. And if you don't have it, you can download it free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Store. So we're pretty excited about that being there.
Thanks, Stitcher.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. So check that out if you will. Subscribe, please, to the stuff on YouTube. And here we're committed to producing 2 video pieces a week, and that's something we're taking very seriously. And we're going to get that. Keep pumping the content out. And we'd love to hear from you guys on what you'd like some content on. We'd be happy to produce some stuff that would be helpful on a whole wide range of topics, and so we're going to be doing that. But we go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say, please send in your ideas, but also if it doesn't have to be topics that you just want to learn about. Let us know if there's a product you want us to review. We love getting our hands on toys and talking about them, and let us know. We'll if we can get our hands on it, we will.
Very good. I'd be remiss if we didn't. We're going to not skip this, but we have our beer and wine review section that is ever so popular. And
I wait for this every week.
Has garnered such positive feedback. I'm going to be completely honest with you when I tell you, if you remember last week, I was drinking the West Virginia Fruit and Berry Uncle Jake's Elderberry wine.
Yeah, that grape juice stuff.
It's a week old. It's completely skunked.
Oh.
That's what I'm drinking tonight. So I'm not going to review it again, because in fairness, it was decent the first week. It's like drinking vinegar this week. So I've been enjoying my vinegar drink tonight.
After you're done, you can clean the kitchen sink with it.
What do you have going on over there?
Okay, well, I did not drink, or I'm not drinking last week's beer, thank God. I'm enjoying a Boddington's Pub Ale. I decided to class it up, and that's why I'm drinking it out of a can. So this is a British beer. When you first taste it, you might think it's flat because it's not all that carbonated, but it's very smooth. It's kind of a nice, but it's kind of a water substitute.
That's not good.
You can drink it very easily.
Unfortunately, we weren't recording when you opened that can tonight because apparently it has some serious kick to it and shot all over the countertop.
Here, the engineers in the room will like this. If you've ever had a Guinness, you might be familiar with the little widget that they put in the cans. They do the same thing with Boddingtons. You might be able to hear it maybe a little bit.
Yep.
I don't know what the heck that thing does, but it's cool that there's a piece of plastic in my beer. And yep, that's it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. I tell you, that was a world-class review. That's a world-class review.
So Boddingtons, you can send all that free beer to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, free plug there. Very good. Well, that's it for episode 4, Alex. It was a good one. We'll be back next week. Don't forget to submit your stuff. Check us out at theradiotechguys.com. And
That's right.
yeah, we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
See you later.